Hi guys, it's me ChazzaHDF1 and welcome to another episode of the podcast, episode 44 of the podcast, where today me and Nib are going to complete the final part of the mid-season reviews for 2019 and look at has the races in 2019 after the new regulations, have the races delivered enough in the first half of 2019? That's what we're going to look at today. First off, just want to say sorry about me not going live straight away at 3 p.m. I had some tech issues. Basically, my computer was slow and it wasn't loading certain apps that I need to use for the stream, such as OBS and Discord. So that's why I didn't start at 3 p.m. But now we're starting, so it's all good. But I just want to, before I bring Nib in and before we get into the races so far this season, I want to talk about 2 or 3 things before we get underway. And the first main thing I want to talk about is the copyright thing from last Sunday, the copyright claim we had, and I want to give an update as to what the situation is. So, as you guys will know if you watched the race review, I said that they told me in a series of emails that they copyrighted us, apparently, according to them, because someone was posting links in the chat. Now, Nib has gone back and looked, and there were no links in the chat, mainly because you cannot post links in the chat. You can't, because I have a setting in my comments settings that you cannot post links in the chat. So that was complete rubbish, meaning that that whole discussion about will I keep the live chat or not, there is now no discussion. I'm absolutely going to keep the live chat, because basically they were lying, because when we asked them for clarification or evidence, they haven't responded yet, and that was a week ago. So clearly they were lying, and yeah, I'm not going to get rid of the live chat. Absolutely no way is that going to happen. But I will say, because now this is the second time they copyrighted us, I'm now going to start to take action, and all I'm going to say, because I don't think I can really say more than what I'm about to say, I am going to start seeking legal advice for this situation, because if we let this continue, then we won't get anywhere, and the only way to get anywhere is to take action, so that's what we're going to do. So yeah, we're not getting rid of the chat, the comments, everything, it'll stay the same. F them. Nothing is going away. Also, and Nib probably doesn't know this yet, but we do now have a new solution to watch-alongs if they do get copyrighted. And I want to thank Rooksfoot for the idea for this. What we're going to do, if we are copyrighted, what we'll do is, take a break for about a minute and just let the realization set in that we've been copyrighted. If we do get copyrighted, if that does happen, then about a minute later, we will record the rest of the watch along and put it up as a part 2, so we can complete the watch along instead of it just being cut off when we get copyrighted. So we will complete it. It won't be, the whole race won't be covered, because we will have to miss out like a minute or so. But again, we'll start recording about a minute later and we'll complete the rest of the watch along, put it up, and then I'll go solve the issue if I can for the channel. So from now on, if I do get a copyright strike, don't worry, I can still upload. I can't stream, but I can still upload. So what we'll do is record the rest of the watch along and put it up so you guys can complete the rest of that stream with us. And one last thing I just want to say is I have had something brought to my attention, and I have actually figured out what the issue is. Some of you guys have been saying that there's been beeping in my audio. What that is my mic, my settings for my mic, I have quite a high compression on it. So when I don't speak like now, no sound, no background noise is heard. Because when I speak, the mic gets activated. So the constant noise that you're hearing from my computer, and that's where it's from, the reason it sounds like a beep is because the mic only gets activated when I start talking. So that's why it sounds like a beep and not a constant noise. So I have found the issue, and I can't resolve it right now, unfortunately, because I don't have enough time or really money to, resolve this kind of issue right now. But I will in the winter try to improve upon this, like I will for many other things, such as graphics and stuff. I will try to improve upon it for next year, but for now, you guys are going to have to, I'm afraid, put up with it for now. But yeah, for next year, it will definitely be improved upon. But that's all I want to tell you guys for now. And if you want to ask me anything about the copyright situation or anything like that later on in the Q&A, then make sure to do so, and I'll answer what you guys have to say about that. But now, let's bring in Nib for the podcast. And Nib, how are you doing, mate?
Yep, on a very early Sunday morning, I'm doing pleasantly well, mate. Thanks for asking. How are you doing yourself?
I'm doing well. It's been a nice week to relax after the racing, because the last 4 races were very, very exciting, and because of that, I wouldn't say tired me out, but I did need a break after those 4 races because of how exciting they were. But after the season we've had so far, I definitely needed a break, so I've had a good week off, and yeah, I'm excited to now get into this podcast, which we'll do now. So what we're going to do again is look at the races so far this season and give our opinion as to whether they've been exciting enough or not. So let's go to the very start of the season in Melbourne, the Australian Grand Prix of 2019. Now, for me, the Australian Grand Prix was actually quite good. I enjoyed it. I thought it was one of the better Australian Grand Prix. It wasn't a classic, but it was a good race. We had good racing in the podium positions, in the midfield. I thought it was a pretty good Grand Prix, and I thought it was a 6 or even at best a 7 out of 10. I actually did enjoy it. But I just want to ask Nib, because obviously you were at the Grand Prix. Were you able to, at the Grand Prix, know it was an exciting race, or was it hard to really know whether it was an exciting race or not?
At the Grand Prix, I was mainly too busy explaining to one of my friends, who's kind of new to watching F1, what exactly was going on. So most of my time was preoccupied doing that. But like, no, I didn't think it was a particularly exciting race. I thought it was a an above average Australian Grand Prix, so probably about a 6. I wouldn't say it was super exciting, more exciting than a usual Australian Grand Prix, unless, of course, it's wet. But no, I didn't think it was particularly exciting. Of course, Bottas absolutely dominated after Hamilton had some damage and all of that, but like the midfield battle behind Giovinazzi, I remember Giovinazzi had some damage from the first lap, and that was causing the Giovinazzi that was one of the main excitements of the race. But apart from that, I wouldn't say it was a particularly exciting race.
Yeah, I can see your point. I will say also, when you go to a Grand Prix, and I've only been to one Grand Prix, it was a 2014 Spanish Grand Prix. If anyone out there has not been to a Grand Prix yet, if you want to enjoy the race, then make sure you try to find a TV screen somewhere that you can watch the action and also watch the cars, because the race I was at, the 2014 Spanish Grand Prix, it wasn't from where we were sitting, which was the corner where Hamilton and Rosberg crashed in 2016. It was turn 4.
Turn 4, yeah.
Yeah, if there wasn't a TV screen there, you wouldn't have thought anything was really going on. But if you have, a way to watch the action around the other parts of the track, then it does help out your knowledge and, whether it's exciting enough for you at the Grand Prix. But I remember that Grand Prix. The two Mercedes cars just completely ran away from everyone else, about a minute ahead of everyone else. And yeah, it wasn't the greatest Grand Prix. But yeah, Australia, as you said, Neb, it wasn't. It's been worse. There's been worse Australian Grand Prix. I think 2018 and 2017 were probably worse, and probably 2015 as well. So it was, I think, a decent start to the season. But then we came to Bahrain, and what a race this was. An absolute classic in the desert. And after qualifying, I knew we were going to have a great race, because we had the 2 Ferraris on the front row, the 2 Mercedes on the second row, and I knew that Hamilton and Bottas would absolutely be trying everything to go after Ferrari and stop them from winning. And once the race started until the race finished, it was action all the time. Even to the point that during the watch along, for the race watch along, about 7 or 8 laps in, I didn't really know what was going on. There was so much going on in the race. I couldn't really keep my eye on anything because you had midfield drivers going side by side basically into every corner. We were trying to watch the top drivers, but again, the midfield was so close and overtaking each other all the time. It was hard to actually see what was going on because of how exciting it was. And Bahrain, again, for the millionth time in a row, it feels like, again, proves why it's such a great racetrack for racing. And it is, for me, one of the best tracks on the calendar in terms of producing exciting racing because you can pass in so many places. Turn 1, turn 4, the middle DRS straight, the back straight before the pit straight. So many places you can overtake. And again, we had another classic Bahrain Grand Prix. Nib, what did you think of Bahrain? Was it as good as I'm saying?
Not gonna lie to you, I can barely remember Bahrain if I'm perfectly honest. I remember Leclerc, of course, losing 1 or 2 cylinders, of course, and of course him losing the lead to Hamilton in the end. But I can't remember too much of the race, to be honest. But I do remember that it was a very, very good race. Of course, how could you forget the 2 Renaults DNFing on the same lap at the same corner? Absolutely, well, not so hilarious for me as a Daniel Ricciardo fan, but quite hilarious to see nonetheless. But I remember there was lots of action, of course, between in the midfield. When is there not action in the midfield? Let's face it, always great battling in the midfield. But uh, I do remember that Bahrain was probably one of the better Grand Prix so far this season. It's not super fresh in my mind like it was the Australian Grand Prix, but yeah, the Bahrain Grand Prix is certainly one of the best races of the year every single year. Since the V6 turbo hybrid era, when has it not been a great race? 2014 was brilliant, 2015 was brilliant. 2016 is probably like the worst year, and that was still a great race. 2017, 2018, they're all been good. So Bahrain is just absolutely guaranteed to be a good race. It's just a great track, and it produces great racing. Of course, you got because of the amount of straights, and then you can get past the other car. If you get past on the main straight, you can get past on the run down to turn 4. So it just produces great racing in it. More tracks would certainly do be designed like that.
Absolutely, and I will say for Herman Tilke, that's probably one of the best tracks he's ever designed because, again, so many places you can overtake, and it basically at this point, with the way the cars are today, in terms of how good they handle, it's basically a power track. So, yeah, it's a great track for racing, and every time we go to Bahrain, we know what we're going to get. We're going to get a classic race with lots of overtaking, lots of controversy, and all of that stuff. But then, after that, we had 3 races in a row that weren't exactly great. China, Baku, and Barcelona. Now, I would like to defend these races because they were not as bad as some people make out. China, I think the reason the Chinese Grand Prix was disappointing for people was because the previous race was so great in Bahrain, and also it was the 1000th Grand Prix in Formula One history. So people were expecting this grand masterclass of racing when when you come to a Formula One race, you cannot expect a great race every time. You know, some races are going to be boring. Some racetracks that normally produce great races sometimes don't produce great races. So I think, honestly, the Chinese Grand Prix was actually quite good, but people, I think, had way too high expectations. I think everyone had too high expectations, including myself, for Baku. And I think after, the 4 races we've had at Baku, I think it's become pretty clear now that racing in Baku is only exciting if we get safety cars and, proper crashes. I think that's the only reason Baku gets exciting. I didn't actually think Baku was that bad. We had good racing in the first stint of the Grand Prix. And then in the second stint, it did quieten down a bit, but we did have a couple flashpoints, such as uh, Ricardo reversing into Kvyat, which was funny. But and then in the end, we had Bottas and Hamilton racing very close for the win. So again, Baku, I don't think was as bad as people make out, but I think we all did get a bit too ahead of ourselves for that race because we thought after the weekend we had up to that point that it was going to be a classic, and then we had the Spanish Grand Prix. Now, again, I don't think Spain was as bad as people make out. It wasn't a great race. I'm not saying it was a great race, but it wasn't, an absolutely terrible Grand Prix. I didn't find it too boring because we had the two Ferrari drivers being so close and racing each other. We had the midfield very close. You had Ricciardo and Sainz very close. You had the Toro Rosso Daniel Kvyat racing the two Haas cars at one point. And yeah, the race up to the safety car wasn't, great or very good. But I think after the safety car came out, we did have a very, very exciting final, 10 laps or something. So those three races, again, they weren't very good, great, or maybe even good, but they were not bad races in my opinion. I think basically people just had too high expectations considering that Bahrain was so great, and because also we have the new 2019 regulations that are supposed to help the cars in terms of following. So I think honestly these races get a bit of a bad rep or bad rap, but I will get onto a race later on that was definitely deserving of its criticism for being bad. But yeah, and you know what that race is. Nib, for these three races, did you think they were better than people were thinking, or do you think like them that it was just terrible time after time?
I wouldn't say it was terrible, but it certainly wasn't great by any sense of the imagination. I think the fact that I can barely remember anything that happened in all three of these Grand Prix shows you just how poor, I think is the best word to use, poor those Grand Prix were. In China, well, that was just an absolute shocker. We'd had two races in a row in China, which were fantastic, 2017 and 2018. But 2019 was just a massive, massive disappointment. Um, then Baku, of course, it's you can't live up to absolutely one of the best races in Formula One history, or certainly the modern in the last decade at Baku, 2 years in a row. But Baku was a little bit disappointing compared to the years previous, that's for sure. But um, it was still a decent race. There's nothing much I think you can complain about Baku. Baku was certainly a decent race. I don't think that fans that were saying that that was absolutely awful. I think they were over exaggerating that one. But I must say, the Spanish Grand Prix, uh yeah, not a fan. Absolutely not a fan. um, of course, I think one of the biggest factors in remembering a race well is a big battle at the front.
Mm.
And these three races, there wasn't particularly a big battle at the front the whole entire race. That's why races like Canada, very fresh in the mind. Bahrain, quite fresh in the mind, and certainly for the, of course, when Vettel and Leclerc were going at it in the first stint of the race, it's quite rememberable. Rememberable. Um, I was stumbling on my words there, but yeah, Baku was good, but the Spanish Grand Prix, as per usual, you can't overtake it at that track, even though there is a massive straight. The long right hander, final corner, the dirty air, you just lose so much time. And out of that chicane, since they've added that chicane, it's just been an absolute nightmare. That track, that chicane that they've added at Barcelona has been one of the absolutely worst additions to any track, I think, on the Formula One calendar. Um, I don't know if it'd be much better without the chicane and go back to like the 2006. I can't remember the last time they ran that without the chicane, but go back to that sort of layout. I'm not sure if that would improve anything, but the way it is with that chicane at the moment, it just doesn't allow for good overtaking. So Spain was bad, but certainly it got a little bit better after that.
Yeah, absolutely did. And yeah, 2006 was the last year they used the double fast right hander, which
Ah,
was
I was right.
yeah, and it was a very exciting corner to watch the cars in. But also, I don't think it's the worst addition to a track. I think the worst addition is the tarmac runoff at the Parabolica at Monza. That's the worst for me. I absolutely despise that. Ruined that corner for me. Um, but yeah, Spain, I can see why you don't think it's good. It had its moments where there were just nothing going on for sure. But as Nib said, after that it got good. Monaco, we had a great battle for the win. Lewis Hamilton versus Max Verstappen for 60 plus laps. And even though at Monaco it is very hard to pass, because Hamilton's tyres were dead, you didn't know when, Hamilton eventually was going to be, right in the clutches of Max Verstappen, and Verstappen was able to go for an overtake. So there was so much just, tension, and we just didn't know what was going to happen. And then, of course, at the very end, Max Verstappen absolutely went for it, and we had a great moment at the end of the Grand Prix between the two. Verstappen, of course, had his penalty. I will say, with this Grand Prix, there were some people that thought this race was still boring because, according to them, if there's no overtaking going on, it's still boring, which I completely disagree with. Because if that's the case, then the Senna Mansell battle in '92 at Monaco is boring because there was no overtaking going on there. And for me, because of having two great drivers racing for the win and having them so close on track for so long and having that tension again there for so long, it made it such a great Grand Prix. And for me, it was probably the best Monaco Grand Prix in the dry since probably 2014, maybe 2013, but it was a very good Monaco Grand Prix. I really did enjoy it. And then after that, we had Canada. Now, if you take out the penalty and how for me it ruined the Grand Prix, if you look at the race, it was actually very exciting because you had Vettel and Hamilton, very close to each other at the front. We had a great battle for P4 between Bottas, Verstappen, Gasly, Ricciardo, Hulkenberg. We had a battle for the points between Stroll, Sainz, and Kvyat. So it was a very, very good race, but I think because of that penalty, it ruins the memory of the Grand Prix for me, because if we didn't have that penalty and we had, say, a final 5 lap battle between Hamilton and Vettel where they were wheel to wheel, then it would have been an even better race. But because of the penalty, it ruined what should have been another classic Canadian Grand Prix. For these two races, Nib, what did you think? And for Canada, did the penalty, ruin the race for you as well?
Monaco was fantastic. Um, you know, I think modern F1 day fans really are all about the overtakes, but the tension that was there for 60 plus laps with Verstappen getting closer and closer and closer to overtaking Hamilton through the first sector, especially when he was oh so close and well tried to move up the inside of the hairpin, but Hamilton defended it very, very well. I think if any other driver on the grid is in Hamilton's seat there, I think that Verstappen probably overtakes him there at the hairpin. I'm not sure if you guys remember that, but that was a fantastic part of the race. Verstappen just could not get past. Ultimately, that's what Monaco is. It's so hard to overtake, but that's just what Monaco is. And love it or hate it, it's just how it is. And Monaco is one of the greatest tracks on the F1 calendar. Should never absolutely leave the F1 calendar. Should always be on the calendar. Um, it was a good race at Monaco, which was good to see. And then of course the Canadian Grand Prix. Well, that was quite an upturn compared to the last couple of races. Even though the Monaco Grand Prix was good, the Canadian Grand Prix was just a massive step up from that. It was an absolutely fantastic race. Battles throughout the field, the whole entire race. Of course, the battle between Vettel and Hamilton could have gone right down to the end. We could have seen an absolute titanic battle between the four-time world champion, five-time world champion, but yeah, it didn't. The FIA ruined the race, of course, as on the live stream. I'm pretty sure we just could not stop ranting about it. I
Yeah.
was I was in particular absolutely astounded by the penalty that they given out, and thankfully since then the FI have been a bit better with the penalties. That is for sure. They've been a bit more lenient. We've seen that really starting at Silverstone, which we'll get onto very shortly, of course. But yeah, the Canadian Grand Prix was good. Would have been absolutely one of the best dry Canadian Grand Prix that I could have remembered. Um, if it wasn't ruined by the penalty.
Yeah, absolutely. It really did ruin it because ever since the penalty was given in the race, all we were talking about was the penalty and not the action on the track. When if they did not give the penalty, then Hamilton would have had to have gone for it and we would have had an epic, last few laps battle for the win. But no, we couldn't get that because of the FIA. And yeah, thankfully, I think they realised that what they did in Canada, in hindsight, was absolutely wrong. But then, of course, after Canada was well, we're going to go to Austria. Paul Ricard can get lost. It was terrible. Um, my memory of Paul Ricard is actually not that good because obviously I did a race watch along there. Nib, you weren't along for that because I think you were ill at the time. But I can't remember that much from the race. I remember the race starting and then Vettel passing the McLarens. But after that, I don't really remember anything. Until the end of the race where Ricciardo went off the track a couple times. It was so bad. That's the one race, I'll admit, it was horrible. It was punishment sitting through that Grand Prix. And to be honest, I think I did well to have so many viewers watching me try to talk over that for an hour and a half. It was, at times, I was actually finding it difficult to say anything because nothing was going on. And yeah, it was horrific. And Nib, I'm sure you must have just fast forwarded straight through the race if you watched it after. Did you do that, or did you watch it live like me?
Sadly, I did watch it live. I was ill for that race, so but yeah, I think the race could best be described by Lewis Hamilton fastest lap of the Grand Prix. I think there was about 20 laps in a row where
Yeah.
Hamilton might have set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. It was absolutely ridiculous. Mercedes had the massive pace advantage over everyone else. And yeah, the only excitement really was between Ricardo, Raikkonen. I can't remember who else. I think there might have been a McLaren in there. Then there was another car. That was the only good part of the Grand Prix. And then, of course, they missed it on the TV because we were too busy watching something else. I think it was Leclerc and Bottas.
Yeah.
For crying out loud. Just, like they're following him through the last sector. It's like you cannot overtake in the last sector. Why are we watching this when there's 4 cars going into one corner on the main straight? For crying out loud. But yeah, one thing I must say in our mid-season review, the I don't know what's going on with Formula One management and their camera directors at the moment. This
Yeah.
season is been worse than usual. I must say that there's been so many times we've been missing overtakes, like when Verstappen overtook Stroll for the lead of the Grand Prix in Germany, which we'll get onto a bit later, of course. But so many times we've missed out on so many battles because we're too busy just watching a Ferrari or a Mercedes or a Red Bull drive around the track with nobody near them because the commentators are making some useless point. I don't understand. We want to see the action because then half the time we actually see the action is on Tuesday or Monday or Sunday or even bloody Friday on Twitter. And that's not how we should be seeing the action. We should be seeing it during the Grand Prix. And I think we need a bit of a step up in that direction. So yeah, a little bit of a rant over there, but yeah, not the Canadian Grand Prix was good. The French Grand Prix, get in the bin.
Absolutely. And yeah, if FOM actually were good at directing the races, then I think the races in our memory would actually be better because we would remember it in a different way if they showed the right action at the right time. For example, we might have remembered the French Grand Prix as being better if they actually showed it live, not after the race had finished. Because I remember looking at the running order at the end of the race and seeing Ricciardo and Raikkonen moving up and down all over the place, and I was like, why aren't we watching this? But of course, we didn't see it. But anyway, that race, yeah, was terrible. And by the way, I think Paul Ricard is an awful circuit, and I think the only way to solve it is probably getting rid of the chicane in the middle of the straight. If that doesn't solve it, then it's a terrible track. But on to Austria. But and this race, the Austrian Grand Prix, it began a full race cycle of great races. Austria was to start off with, it was a slow burner. We didn't have any, majorly great battles. We had overtaking, but it wasn't anything, great or amazing. But then Max Verstappen, after his pit stop, came just charging through the field and won the Grand Prix in one of the best drives I've seen of the 2010s. It was so good, and it was so exciting watching that Grand Prix and watching the last 20-30 laps unfold. It was so great, and definitely a pleasure to cover that one. And then of course we had Silverstone, and we had plenty of battles at Silverstone. Leclerc versus Verstappen. I'll always remember that battle for it seemed like forever. It was about 10 laps or so, but it seemed like forever, and I wanted it to keep carrying on. And then, we had other battles. Leclerc, Gasly, Vettel, Bottas, Hamilton. People forget that those two had a great battle. They went side by side into cops on about lap, I think 5 it was, for the lead. A great battle there. We had Vettel, of course, as you can see on your screen, hitting Max Verstappen. It was a great race. It was another great race. I think Silverstone was better than Austria because it was, from start to finish, constant battling. Even in the midfield, we had Sainz, Ricciardo, Raikkonen battling up to P8, Kvyat battling up, even though we didn't see any of Daniel's overtakes. Again, thank you, FOM. But yeah, I thought Silverstone was better than Austria, and after Silverstone, it just got better as we came to Hockenheim. Now, for me, Hockenheim of 2019 is one of the best races of all time, and is the best race I have seen live. I never got to see the 2011 Canadian Grand Prix live, and honestly, I would say it was probably better than that race. If you go watch back the 2011 Canadian Grand Prix, I don't think it can rival the drama and excitement of the 2019 German Grand Prix. It had everything. We had basically every driver had some kind of moment on circuit. We had every single driver getting wheel to wheel with someone, constant battling. We had no idea what was going to happen next. We didn't know who was going to be on the podium, who was going to finish in the points. We had no idea at times what was going on, and basically the race watch along was just me and Nib screaming for 2 hours straight. that's how exciting the race was. And if it's a great race and we're screaming for that long, it's a great race. You absolutely know that to be the case. But yeah, great race, and I think that's definitely one of the best races of all time for sure. And then we had the last race before the summer break, the Hungarian Grand Prix of 2019. Now, I will say, because we had the copyright strike, it did actually ruin my memory of the Grand Prix, because we missed, of course, Hamilton Verstappen at the end, Vettel Leclerc, the midfield battles. That copyright strike, in my memory, made the Hungarian Grand Prix feel worse. But if you actually go back and watch the Grand Prix, it was one of the best Hungarian Grand Prix we've had in the last decade or so. It was so good. And you would have thought, looking at that track, not looking at that track, looking at that Grand Prix, why do people complain so much about not being able to pass? Because there were so many overtakes during that Grand Prix. It was so great. Great battles between Kvyat and Albon, Ricciardo, Magnussen, Hamilton, Verstappen, Vettel, Leclerc, Bottas in there. Who else? Norris. Great battling by Norris. Just great from start to finish. But again, that copyright strike for me did ruin my memory of that, and that is a shame, but there you go. Nib, for those 4 races, what were your memories of how good they were?
Phew, well, you've given me quite a few races to go through here. 4 in a row. Crikey. You're Maybe you're giving me quite a lot to remember here now. So starting off with Austria, was it?
Yep.
Yes, it was Austria. Yeah, well, that was a fantastic race. That was the really start of the turnaround this season for Red Bull. They brought a new front wing and Super Max, as I like to call him at the moment, Super Max. Mainly after the song, which the Dutch fans have called him. The Super Max song. You should give it quick listen on YouTube, perhaps. But yeah, it was the really start of a turnaround for Red Bull because they'd been quite poor up until their car had been quite poor. Max had been very good up until that stage, of course, but it's only gotten better. The new front wing brought them a lot of performance. Um, and then, of course, yeah, Max with a fantastic drive, overtaking absolutely everyone in the field on his way, storming to the victory, passing Leclerc. Very controversially, of course, and um, we had to wait about 3 or 4 hours. Okay, it wasn't that cool, but it was quite a few hours after the race. It was like Melbourne 2014 all over again, um, waiting for the result. And in the right, Verstappen won the Grand Prix, in my opinion. Right decision. It was just racing between him and Leclerc. That's all it is. But yeah, that was a fantastic Grand Prix. Certainly towards the end, when Max started to make his charge through the field, it really did get great. But Silverstone, oh my days, that was a fantastic Grand Prix. Um, Leclerc and Verstappen. I, I I can't remember how many times there was side by side in corners where you just really particularly shouldn't be side by side. It was absolutely incredible. The defense and some of the overtakes that Leclerc was doing in that Grand Prix. Remember around the outside of Gasly at like turn two.
Yeah.
It's not F1 2019, buddy. It's not the game. It's, it's something you do on the game on this very slow AI. And then when he overtook Verstappen, or nearly got past Verstappen again at the chicane at the end of the last sector, that was absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, the Silverstone Grand Prix was just fantastic. There was battles everywhere. Ricardo and Sainz, Ricardo and Norris, Kvyat, of course, had a fantastic race. Bottas and Hamilton were going at it, and of course, the safety car ultimately decided that Hamilton would win. Although I think that Bottas was going to be on that 2 stop, and Hamilton was going to be on that 1 stop the day. So I think it was Hamilton who was going to win that Grand Prix no matter what. Then, of course, I nearly forgot, Vettel went in the back of Verstappen. You know, um, absolutely crazy moment. There's so much to remember from the Silverstone Grand Prix, and certainly one of the better Silverstone Grand Prix I've seen in a completely dry race. In recent memory. But now on to the German Grand Prix. And I'm gonna say it, for me, personally, I rate this higher than Canada 2011. Um, Purely because in 2011 I was 12 years old. The Canadian Grand Prix in Australia is at like 4 a.m. and there wasn't a 2-hour rain break delay during the middle of the Grand Prix for the German Grand Prix. So personally, that's why the overall Grand Prix, I rate the German Grand Prix at the moment higher than the Canadian Grand Prix. I think in a few years' time, going back and watching the Grand Prix and comparing, I think we can probably give a fairer assessment. And of course, we're gonna have a bit of a recency bias, saying that the German Grand Prix was better than Canada. I fully kind of admit that. Um, but I think it's very close between those. Um, and some people might say, "Oh, you haven't been watching F1 for that long." I've been watching F1 since 2009, so I've been watching quite a fair time. But I just at the moment I prefer the Canadian Grand Prix. Sorry, not the Canadian Grand Prix, the German Grand Prix of that at the moment. Of course, we had so much happening. Verstappen spinning, Verstappen going nowhere at the start, having a proper Mark Webber start once again, I must say. Um, there was just so much. Raikkonen was brilliant on the first lap up into third place. Bottas spinning into the wall, Hamilton in the wall, Leclerc in the wall, Hulkenberg in the wall, Norris retiring, Ricardo blowing up as usual. 2 years in a row now, the German Grand Prix. Just so much happened at that Grand Prix, and the drama the whole time um, through the there was just so much action. It was fantastic. Certainly one of the best Grand Prix that I can that I can remember. As I'm just laughing at someone in the chat here, but um, it was just a fantastic Grand Prix, and the Hungarian Grand Prix was fantastic as well. Of course, the copyright strike did sort of ruin it because I didn't pay as much attention, um, in the latter stages of the race because I was just were quite angry.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just a fantastic race. That whole entire race, Verstappen and Hamilton within 2 seconds of each other, and then Mercedes pulled an absolute worldie of a strategy. And I'm sorry if anyone's still complaining or criticizing Red Bull for not pitting. Mercedes, the only way Red Bull were going to win that Grand Prix is if they stayed ahead of Mercedes the whole Grand Prix. If they had pitted Max after Hamilton pitted, they would have come out behind Hamilton, and there was no way that Verstappen was going to re-overtake Hamilton. It's just not going to happen at a track where um, it is hard to overtake, especially if there's a Mercedes engine and you've got a Honda engine. It's going to be so hard to overtake on similar age tires. It just wasn't going to happen. So Red Bull had to stay out. They couldn't do anything else. They did the right thing, and at the end of the day, it was a fantastic drive by Hamilton. And just as maybe some pundits out there, Nico Rosberg, was saying that Max was better than Hamilton, which Hamilton has responded with an absolute firebolt of an Instagram post on his
Yeah.
story. That's for sure. He might as well have tagged Nico Rosberg in that, but I think that Hamilton just showing once again why he is absolutely the best driver on the grid. I think that Max has had the better season overall so far, but absolutely Hamilton at the moment is still the absolute best driver on the grid. I think there's no doubting that. He was absolutely superb. Um, you know, he caught, I think, Verstappen at about 6 seconds in 3 laps. It was absolutely mental what he was doing when he come out of the pits. So, yeah, it was it was a fantastic Grand Prix and a fantastic way to end the first half of the season. And now, of course, we're just waiting until the end of the month for the Belgium Grand Prix, which I'm sure, the Belgian Grand Prix, we're going to see a little bit more action between Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes. I think all three of those teams will be in the hunt. And that, of course, we've still got a long way to go, and we'll preview that in a couple of weeks' time. But I'm certainly very excited heading into the second half of the season.
Yeah, I am too, because I think if you look at the remaining races on the calendar, there's tracks where we're going to have even more great races. Spa, Monza. I think Suzuka will be good because I think we'll have a good battle at the front and in the midfield again. Of course, USA is always great. I think Mexico will be all right. Brazil will be great. So yeah, we'll have at least 5 good races before the end of the season, and we've got 9 to go. So I think we are in for a good second half of the season. I just want to, before we come to you guys in the chat, because we didn't get the chance to talk about a couple things from Hungary because of the copyright thing, I just want to talk about a couple things from that race. So one, as Nib said with the Red Bull strategy, the reason Red Bull, for me, were right in not pitting for Verstappen for a second time is because, as Nib said, Hamilton already had him undercut. And even though it seemed as though it was easier to pass in that Grand Prix than we were thinking, it would have been better for Verstappen to stay out and hope that Lewis could not pass him instead of, coming out behind and then trying to make his way back in that way. But, and I think, in hindsight, yeah, he should have pitted before Hamilton. But again, in hindsight, you should do lots of things in life. So I don't think Red Bull should have pitted. And if I was Red Bull, I would have done the exact same thing. I would have took that risk. And to be honest, when Mercedes pitted, I didn't think it would work. I did not think it would work. I thought, with the laps remaining, considering the tyres Lewis was going on to, I thought maybe he could close in a bit, but I didn't think he would win the Grand Prix. So I think Red Bull were right in what they did. They simply didn't have a quick enough car in the race. That's why Red Bull did not win. They didn't win because Lewis Hamilton in that car was too quick. So for me, Red Bull were absolutely fine in what they did. But also I want to talk about another thing that I've seen people talking about, and that is the Kevin Magnussen defence against Daniel Ricciardo. There has been people out there that have been saying that K-Mag's defending was bad or dangerous. I don't know what people are watching, but it was not bad or dangerous at all. It was absolutely fine, because if you look at the bit where Ricardo was closing in on the pit straight, Ricardo wasn't even side on to Magnussen, and he had plenty of time to react to Kevin moving over. And I don't think Kevin at any point was doing anything bad. I think people overreacting because it's Kevin Magnussen, and there's lots of people out there that do not like him because he likes a bit of rough and tumble. He likes to get stuck in. He doesn't care if there's a bit of contact and stuff like that. He does not care, and I like Kevin Magnussen because of that. So for me, I don't know why people are complaining, and at times people were crying basically over it. It was nothing. It was absolutely nothing. That defense against Daniel Ricciardo. Nib, what did you think of it? I think you thought the same, didn't you?
We had a little bit of Discord issues there. But I think you were talking about Ricardo and Magnussen. But yeah, I've seen Ricardo, quite honestly, getting upset, or more, I'd say more frustrated that he couldn't get past Magnussen than actually crying or being angry. Um, Absolutely fair racing by Magnussen. He did nothing wrong. Um, Nothing to be talked about, if I'm perfectly honest.
Yeah, absolutely. But there were some people out there that, for some reason, thought he was doing some really dangerous defending. I will say though, Kevin's dive bomb on Kvyat was an absolute, not massive dive bomb. It was an omega dive bomb. It was from miles back. I've never seen a dive bomb from that far back. By the way, as well, if you go back, guys, and look at the onboards from Hungary, Kvyat's dive bomb on Albon, he was miles behind, but he just went in there, sailed in there, and somehow did not fly off the track. It was unbelievable how those two drivers were able to do that and maintain some sort of racing line on the exit of the corner. But yeah, it was great racing, and yeah, that is our review of the races so far. But guys, before I come to you guys in the live chat and get your thoughts as to what races for you guys, answer this: what races for you have been, say, your top 3 of the season so far? Let me know in the live chat, and I'll read out your comments for, say, 5 or 10 minutes in just a moment. Just want to say, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, as every Saturday up until the next Grand Prix at the end of the month at Spa, we will be doing a podcast live at 3 p.m. UK time, hopefully, if I have no technical issues, at 3 p.m. UK time on a Saturday. So don't forget to subscribe for that. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. Or just go to my homepage, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell for more content like this. And smash the like button if you want to see the podcast episodes continue for the rest of the season, of course. But yeah, let me know what your top 3 races of the season so far are. Me and Nib will do ours now, so I'll go first. For me, number 1, Hockenheim. No debate whatsoever. P2 in my top 3. I'm going to go for Silverstone. And then in third, I'm going to go for Bahrain. So Hockenheim, Silverstone, Bahrain is my top 3 races of the season so far. And hopefully, one of the final 9 races can break into that top 3. Nib, for you, what would your top 3 be so far?
Now, before I get on to this, I think you're disrespecting Mr. Ricardo a little bit there, saying that Magnussen's dive bomb is the best dive bomb you've ever seen. How dare you? How dare you? I think some of the dive bombs that Mr. Ricardo's pulled out, I remember on Hamilton at China. Most famously, I think this is probably one of the best overtakes he's ever done. Is that Monaco again? Not Monaco. Why am I saying Monaco? Monza against Raikkonen. Come on,
Yeah.
it was about 100 meters behind Raikkonen, and he still got down the inside and made the move. I don't know how he quite did that, but of course, back onto my defending Ricardo a little bit there. I just had to, I couldn't help myself. But back onto it now. Oh dear, sorry. But yeah, best races. Obviously, Hockenheim is the best race by quite comfortably. Then number 2 for me would be Silverstone. And then number 3 is probably between Austria and Bahrain. And because Austria is the most recent one, and I can't remember Bahrain particularly well, I'm probably going to have to go Austria. A bit of recency bias once more, but yeah, that's probably my top three. So Germany, Silverstone number two, and then Austria number three.
Absolutely, yeah. I think Austria. Still great race. I will say though, it is. I think after Hockenheim and Silverstone, it's pretty hard to go for a third place because you've got Bahrain, Austria, Canada, and Hungary, which are all great in their own respect. But let me quickly move on to a different picture. There you go. Um, and now, yeah, we'll read out the chat and see what you guys have to say. And yeah, give me your top three for races so far, and we will, or I will read them out. So let me find the first one, and then we'll get to the rest of them. So Ace Race says Bahrain number 1, Hockenheim 2, Austria 3, and then 4 and 5 for him is Silverstone and Hungary. Annette, great to see you. Says, hold on a minute. Says Germany number 1, and then Austria and Silverstone. Pedro Goldfinger says Germany, Austria, Silverstone. Ace Ray gives his top 3 for worst races. China number 1, France number 2, Spain number 3. I think France has to win. If you're going to do a top 3 bad races, France would have to win. It was unbelievably bad. Sebastian says Hockenheim number 1, Bahrain number 2, and Austria number 3. So he doesn't go for Silverstone in his top 3 there. Let me see if there's any others in the chat. And no, I can't see any at the moment.
Twisted has given his. He's abbreviated it, but he's given it Silverstone,
okay.
Bahrain, and then Hockenheim.
I was wondering why he commented that, but there you go. The Silverstone, Bahrain, Hockenheim. But right, before we get on to the Q&A, I just want to get into one last thing. I'm going to let Nib give a roundup for him of the teams and drivers so far, because I've already done mine yesterday and the day before. I did a mid-season review for the top teams and drivers and the midfield teams and drivers driving for those midfield teams. If you haven't seen them yet, the F1 mid-season review for Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull is in the description, and so is the midfield mid-season review. They are both in the description. If you haven't seen them, make sure to do so after we finish here so you can, complete the set of mid-season reviews. But Nib, yeah, if you can, and round up what you thought of the drivers and the teams so far in 2019.
Right, well, I'll go all the way through the teams and the drivers, and I'll be as blunt and brutally honest as I possibly can be. If I want to English, that would be nice. But I think Mercedes, best team, they've proved it. Hamilton, been above average, not at his best, but still comfortably winning the championship. Bottas, been good in qualifying, not good enough in the races. Ferrari, awful, so much potential, but their car has ultimately let them down. Vettel, been better than most people have said that he's been, but the last few races he's been shown up a little bit by Leclerc. Moving on to Leclerc, perhaps still showing that he's still lacking a little bit of experience. Of course, it is only his second year in Formula One. He's made a couple of mistakes which have cost him, of course, Baku qualifying, Germany in the Grand Prix, and he's been quite unlucky at Austria and, of course, then at Bahrain not to win the Grand Prix. But Leclerc has done a good job, that's for sure. Red Bull, Max, Super Max, that's all can be said. Then on to Gasly. Abysmal. Then we'll move on to McLaren. Norris, I think he's grown a lot in these races at not Austria, Australia. He showed some hesitant driving. He didn't really go for the move on Giovinazzi, and that ruined his race. And we've seen now since then that he's really moved on to be very aggressive and assertive in his overtakes. But for me, driver of the midfield so far this season, Carlos Sainz. Yep. So now moving on to Renault. Bitterly disappointing. If Renault have been moving on to Ricardo. Been good, but I feel as if he's getting pretty demotivated quite quickly at Renault, and I think it's showing that him and the team are starting to argue a little bit, and all that. Hulkenberg, kind of average. What I expected from Hulkenberg, people thought that he was seriously going to have a chance of beating Ricardo. Um, yeah, that was just not going to happen. Let's be real for that. But yeah, he's been pretty average, been a little bit disappointing, but he's picked up some very good, solid points finishes. Now I'm going to have to start remembering half the teams. We're not going to go in the usual order that we usually do go in because I just got to remember the teams now because my brain is absolutely awful at this time in the morning. Uh, Alfa Romeo, Raikkonen, he's just been Raikkonen. He's done a good job. Giovinazzi, been getting better. Giovinazzi had a bit of a tough start to the season, but we're seeing it at Austria, we're seeing at Baku that he has been good and is quite and showing some promise, which I didn't expect him to do because you know arguably he's performing better than his old GP2 counterpart. Pierre Gasly at the moment. He's showing potential that he could actually make it in this sport. Now moving on to Haas. Rich Energy and Haas have probably been on about the same level so far this year. Rich Energy, of course, dreadful. Haas have been dreadful. K-Mag showing that he's absolutely the better driver in the team. Um, Even though perhaps the results in the last couple of races have not reflected that with Grosjean using the old car. Grosjean, the most frustrating driver in the sport. He's been so awful so far that, like in the first half of the season, and then boom, he starts to perform towards the end of the season, and then who knows, just by those couple of performances, he might just keep his drive for the 2020 season. Now moving on to Racing Point. Um, Hampered by their lack of upgrades, and that now that they've brought their upgrades from Hockenheim and to Hungary, I think the only way is up for Racing Point. Stroll qualifying, that's all that needs to be said. Works if he works on his qualifying, he'll be there. He had obviously fantastic result um, at Hockenheim, but yeah, qualifying is where Stroll needs to do. Perez was fantastic in the first couple of races, but since then he's been a little bit quiet, if I'm perfectly honest. But I'm sure that Perez in the second half of the season will produce some good performances. Toro Rosso, Albon has been better than I've expected. Always thought that Albon was harshly treated by the community, saying that it was the worst driver. Albon was very good in F2. He was better than Norris last year in F2. He was the only reason why the championship went down to the final race in Abu Dhabi with Russell. But yeah, Albon has made some mistakes, but he's been pretty good. Kvyat, so happy to see him back and so happy to see him driving at his full potential again. And then on to Williams, I believe. I think I've got every team so far. Kubica somehow has got the team's only point, but he's been absolutely awful. There's been some races where Russell's out qualified him. I think on the last race was 1.3 seconds. I think that's all that needs to be said. Great to see him back, of course, but sadly, I think those injuries and his time out of the sport have hampered him a bit too much, sadly, which is a great shame because Kubica was such a special driver back in the day. Um, and yeah, it just really does suck. It's a bad situation. Russell, fantastic. I think it really shown that he has a great future in this sport. That he has the potential to be a top driver. But we just need to see him in a better car for 2020. But we're not sure if that happens. But yeah, that is my short summary, my blunt and brutal summary of the 2019 season for the teams and drivers so far.
Yep, and thank you very much for that. It was very good. And just to let you guys know, and I'll get the graphic up now, so make sure, guys, in the chat, put your questions in, and for the next, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, we'll answer the best questions we can find. Just to let you guys know, next week, this time next week, we're going to be doing another live podcast, of course, where in that episode, we are going to preview the final 9 races for all the teams and drivers. So just to let you guys know, that's what we're going to be doing. Then also, as you were talking there, I just remembered, Sergio Perez. I don't believe Perez has scored a point since Baku. That is very surprising, because normally Perez, in his Formula 1 career, is always in there on a consistent basis. But yeah, I think since Baku, he has not scored a point, which is quite worrying for him. I know the car has not been most of the time that good, but, you know, Stroll scored in Canada and Perez could have done better. Then, of course, Perez made a critical error at Hockenheim when he was in the top 10. So I think Perez definitely, before we get to the end of the European season at either Spa or Monza, he'll be very keen to finally get a points finish for the first time in what for him must seem like forever. But yeah, make sure to put your questions in, guys, and we'll go ahead and answer them. Right, let me just take a look at what you guys are saying. By the way, Annette, thank you very much. Saying, just want to say, Chaz, I'm glad you're fighting this copyright strike, and yeah, I'm going to, because if I let them off, they'll keep doing it, because when I've had contact with them, they have in the past assured me that it won't happen again, and it happened again. So, you know, I can't just trust that they won't do it again. So, you know, got to take action now, because I can't have, you know, this thing continue. But yeah, let's get into these questions. I can see some coming now. Right, let's take a look. Ace Ray, do you think McLaren will be able to challenge Ferrari in the future? I think, to be honest, I think aerodynamically, I don't think McLaren are actually that far behind Ferrari. I think they're probably around about the same. Because if you look at Hungary, Ferrari were, what, 0.8 of a second ahead of McLaren, and if you compare the power unit difference, it's about that. So I think McLaren are aerodynamically, they're right there with Ferrari. What they need is, at the moment, if they were to be on that level, is power. Obviously, with Renault, they're not going to get that. And McLaren, with how they dealt with Honda, that is, you know, they've got to suck this up now. They decided to go on this path with Renault instead of Honda. But if McLaren are going to stick with Renault power, then they probably do need another half a second aerodynamically, and then hope that Ferrari either get worse or stay the same for 2020 or, you know, in the future. But right now, aerodynamically, I don't think McLaren are that far off Ferrari. I think they're around about the same as Ferrari. The reason Ferrari are a top team this season is because they have so much power. That's the reason they're a top team. If they didn't have that power and they had, say, Renault levels of power, I think Ferrari would be in the midfield, because aerodynamically and race pace wise, that car is absolutely terrible. Just look at Hungary. They were a minute off the win. A minute! How could you be a minute off the win in a Ferrari? And they pitted one less time. So, absolutely awful for Ferrari in Hungary. In qualifying, they looked as though they were going forward. But, yeah, the race was really bad. Right, let me look at some others here. Sebastian, if Ferrari are favourites for Spa and Monza, which driver do you think are more likely to win, Leclerc or Vettel? Also, is Suzuka a power circuit? I think at Spa, I would go for Sebastian Vettel, because Sebastian is very good at Spa. And at Monza, I'd go for Charles Leclerc, But I actually don't think Ferrari will win either race, and I don't think Ferrari will win a race this season because they'll go full Ferrari again. They'll find a new way of losing. They'll I don't know, forget to put tyres on at the pit stop or something like that. You know what Ferrari are like. And is Suzuka a power circuit? I would say I would say yes, because I think most of it is high speed enough for it to be a power circuit, so yeah. But I think because the first sector is so aerodynamic compared to the other two, I'd have to say that Ferrari, even though it is, a lot of it has its circuit, has its sectors where it's about power, I don't think Ferrari are instantly going to be amazing because of that. Sebastian also asked, what team and driver do you like the most? I don't support any of the teams or drivers, as you guys know, but in terms of who I like, my favourite team will always be Ferrari. I know I rip them to shreds all the time, but that's the team I most like. Again, I don't support them. As long as we get a great race, I could care less who wins the Grand Prix. And for drivers, the most exciting for me is Max Verstappen. So that's why I like him, because I only like probably the most exciting and hard-working, well-deserving drivers on the grid. Nib, of course. Your favourite driver is going to be what? Ricardo, and favourite team will be Renault, I assume.
I wouldn't say at the moment that my favourite team is Renault. Driving me a bit mad, if I'm perfectly honest. But my two favourite drivers got to Charles Leclerc. Been a massive fan of Leclerc for quite some time now. Certainly started to hype up in F2 when he was absolutely dominating. I remember one particular Grand Prix at Silverstone where he was taking a lap out of everyone else, and he was having engine issues. So yeah, Leclerc and Ricardo are my favorite drivers, and my favorite team. Um, Back in the day when I first kind of fell in love and started watching F1 a little bit. Um, so that was around 2007, 2006. It was Ferrari because I really liked Felipe Massa. Um, so Ferrari at heart, like, are my favorite team, but I don't really support a team. Obviously I hope Renault do well, because Ricardo's there. Basically, anyone that Ricardo goes to, will probably be my favorite team. But very low key Ferrari, at heart is the team that were my favorite when I first fell in love with the sport. So kind of have to say that Ferrari are kind of at base my kind of go to team.
Yeah, absolutely. Same for me. And as Sebastian Vettel said once, everyone in some way, shape, or form loves Ferrari.
Yep.
Right, Francisco asks, what is your top 5 drivers of the season so far? His is Max first, Lewis second, and then Carlos, Kimi, and Norris. Top 5 drivers of the season so far. Right, I'll do that first. So Verstappen first. For me, I think Verstappen has been the best driver this season, considering how well he's performed in that car. Hamilton, I'd say P2 in that. And then third, I'm going to go for Carlos Sainz, honestly. I think Carlos has been that good. So yeah, Carlos Sainz in third. Fourth, I will go for Kimi Raikkonen. And then in fifth, I'll go for Sebastian Vettel in fifth, because I think Sebastian has actually been better than people give him credit for in 2019. Sebastian, most of the time, I think has been better than Charles Leclerc. But you have to remember, Sebastian has had a bit of bad luck at times. He did make a couple errors, Sebastian, Silverstone, Bahrain. But most of the time, I think Sebastian has been ahead of Charles Leclerc, so I'll go Vettel in fifth. Nib, what would your top 5 drivers be so far this season?
Well, certainly very much copying your top four. So first would be Verstappen, second Hamilton, and it's so crazy that you think Hamilton's been the second best driver so far this year, and I think that Hamilton can go to new levels to where he's performing at the moment. Of course, he had a fantastic performance in Hungary, but I still think that he can perform much better than that. So I think, yeah, if Hamilton performs his absolute maximum, it's scary to think what he can do, to be perfectly honest. Third, I absolutely have to put Carlos Sainz. He's been fantastic. Fourth, Kimi Raikkonen. He's been absolutely dead consistent, as you'd expect from the Kimstar. And then in fifth, I think you could put so many drivers in fifth. Vettel, I don't think I'd put Vettel in fifth. You could put Norris in fifth, like Francisco has. You could put so many drivers in fifth. But screw it. I think I'm going to go Lando Norris. I think that he's grown so much, even in the first 11 races he's shown in the sport, and being a rookie coming into a team like McLaren, I think he's done a very good job. And he's got a very fast teammate against him, and I think he's done for the most part a good job against Sainz. I think McLaren have probably had the best two performing drivers so far this season. So yeah, I think I'd go for Lando in fifth.
Yeah, I think even though I haven't gone for Lando in fifth, I think definitely Lando's a top so far this season, top 7, top 8, probably at worst. Also, other people, I think Daniel Ricciardo. I think Daniels has actually been quite good this season, but the car is not allowing him to show
Yep.
how good he has been in that midfield pack. If the Renault car was like it was in Canada, on a mostly consistent basis, I think Ricciardo would be in a Carlos Sainz type position, but the Renault's not there yet. And as you said, Nib, earlier, I think Ricciardo is now starting to lose confidence. And when Ricciardo loses confidence, you're not getting the best out of Daniel Ricciardo. Ricciardo has to be confident if you're going to get the best Daniel Ricciardo, in my opinion.
Amen.
Right, let me find some other questions here. So the next one, Tonka, who will replace Gasly? I think it'll be Daniel Kvyat. By the way, just to let you guys know, I've got part 2 to why Pierre Gasly should be dropped from Red Bull Racing. It's finished and it will be uploaded on Wednesday at 12 p.m. UK time. So yeah, that's coming. And I think Kvyat will be replacing him for 2020. And Nib, do you agree?
I think it's going to be Nico Hulkenberg. I'm just kidding. Of course, those rubbish rumors that were circulating early on this season when Ricardo was quite convincingly beating him. It'd make no sense. But yeah, I think Kvyat. I think I'd probably put Kvyat in the Red Bull. Why not? I think he performed quite well on the Red Bull. As we talked about a couple of times now, he did beat Ricardo, of course, in 2015 with the points. That due to various reasons, but at the end of the day, he scored more points than Daniel Ricciardo, and then he made one mistake. Red Bull chucked him out because they wanted Max in the car, plain and simple. So I think that Kvyat deserves his spot back in Red Bull, and yeah, I think that's the right thing that Red Bull should do.
Also, with Kvyat in how he did at Red Bull, I do actually have stats in comparison to Gasly in that video coming up on Wednesday that showcase how Daniel is absolutely right now better than Pierre Gasly and is definitely a better fit for me than Pierre Gasly in that team.
Spoiler alert: he has 2 podiums.
And wait, is it 2? No, 3. 3 podiums.
3. Yeah. Yes. Canada, Hungary, and
no, it's Hungary, China, Hockenheim. I think, yeah, it is.
No, he got a podium at China.
Yeah, did you? I thought you said Canada.
No, to be honest, I might have said Canada, but I meant China. He got a podium. The race before then, he was dropped. Yeah, but they won Max in the car. Fair enough. Max has been brilliant, but Kvyat should be back in Red Bull.
Absolutely. Right, let me find some other comments here or questions. And Marco SA1. Do you think Ferrari is going to win a race? No, I don't think they will. The reason I don't think they will is because they, as a team, management-wise, cannot get the job done. They can't. Their drivers are not performing at a high enough level for them to absolutely get enough out the car to win. And Ferrari will find a way. They'll find a way to throw it away, cock it up, and somehow end up not winning the Grand Prix. That's the thing. At Monza, Ferrari might be on pole by half a second. They really could. But you know that even if they win, it'll be barely. They'll barely win that race because that's how Ferrari operate. Ferrari are like the England national football team. They have the potential and they have the absolute ability to, do well in these certain places, but they will make it as hard and punishing as possible for the fans. That's what Ferrari are. They make any race where they should do well way harder than it should be. Way harder than it should be. Look at Hockenheim. At Hockenheim, they probably should have been second and third, on the grid. And look at the weekend they had. It was so inconsistent and so poor. So, yeah, I don't think Ferrari will win a race. And I think Ferrari will probably, their next win will probably come if they do improve their car aerodynamically, which they should for 2020, I hope. If they do that and they make a step forward, a big step forward compared to this year, then I think Ferrari will win one of the first 4 or 5 races in 2020. But 2019, I don't think so. I don't think they have what it takes to win. I think Mercedes and Red Bull will be the drivers, or be the teams rather. They'll be taking the victories in the final 9 races. Nib, do you think Ferrari will win, or will they do what they usually do?
As Tonka has put in the chat, Ferrari is like a box of chocolates. Now, some of you might miss that reference, of course, from Forrest Gump. But earlier on the chat, I think someone brought up Forrest Gump, and then we've gone with that line. But yeah, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen with Ferrari. Although that's a lie. We actually do. We know that they're somehow going to bottle it. They're somehow going to, as you said, very politely, they're going to cock it up, and yeah. But I think their absolute best chances of winning it, of course, at Spa and Monza, and I think that they'll probably take pole at both of those Grand Prix. But of course, in the race, it's probably going to have to be 36 degrees for them to win because Mercedes struggle a little bit in the heat. Ferrari tend to do a little bit better in the heat. So yeah, I think that a lot of things are gonna have to go in Ferrari's favor for them to win a Grand Prix this year. But it certainly could happen, So let's see. Certainly Monza and Spa are absolutely their best chances to win a Grand Prix.
Yeah, they definitely are. And when I say they're not going to win a race, that doesn't mean they're not going to be contending. I think they'll contend. They just will bottle it basically every time. Spa, I think at Spa, when it comes to that race, I think the one thing they need to do to win is make sure they're leading at the end of the first lap. Because I think, because of that middle sector, I think Ferrari will just, because of their bad tyre wear, they'll just slowly fall away, even though their straight line speed is so great. Monza, they should really dominate that race, but I mean, look at last year. Locked out the front row, still didn't win. So, yeah. If they don't win at Spa and Monza, it's a guarantee they won't win. And if they don't win at Spa or Monza, then they should absolutely give up on this car because, what is there really to gain so late in the season for Ferrari? I don't see what there is to gain for them. Right, let's find some other questions here. Just missed one. Hold on a minute. Sebastian, when do the teams take their second power unit of the season? They've already took it. They took it on quite a long time ago. I think the last time, or the last team, French Grand Prix with, I think it's the last team to do it was at the French Grand Prix. So for Spa and Monza, you'll start to see the third and final power unit of the season. So it'll be interesting to see for the manufacturers who's improved, who's not. Apparently Honda are going to get another 25 horsepower from their new upgrade. Hopefully that's true. By the way, I think Honda's new upgrade will come at the Italian Grand Prix for two reasons. One, Red Bull will be a lot better at Spa than they will Monza, so they want to take it at a race they're not going to win at anyway. And also, because the Max Verstappen army will be at Spa, they don't want to be having Verstappen start at the back or in the pit lane. So I think they'll take on new power units in Monza. They might give Gasly the new power unit at Spa and have him start from the back to try and, I don't know, just run a test session or something in the race. And then what? Renault going to be taking penalties for all their drivers, I believe, at Spa and Monza. I think that's been confirmed by Cyril Abiteboul. And well, according to Renault, their power unit is 1,000 horsepower now. Not sure what to say about that. Ferrari, as long as Ferrari maintain with their next spec of power unit, as long as they maintain the pace in a straight line they have, I don't think they really can complain enough of Mercedes. All their new upgrade is about is maintaining the reliability and closing in on Ferrari, but they haven't closed in on Ferrari power-wise at all this season. So I think the manufacturer to look out for is Honda with the Spec 3 power units, because if they step up a bit more on the power side, then later on in the season, Red Bull might look even stronger with Max Verstappen than they did in the last couple races. Right, let me find some others.
Just to pop Drib in the chat, saying that Mercedes hasn't brought up an engine upgrade. Yes, they absolutely did to the Canadian Grand Prix.
Yeah, they brought, and it was very unreliable at the start of its life, wasn't it? Because Stroll had a blow up in practice 3, I think, and then Hamilton's car had an issue. Bottas had an issue in France, and Bottas.
That was more due to the heat, though.
Yeah, yeah, true. And then Bottas had an issue in Hungary, but I don't know if that was a Spec 2 that was in practice 1, because he did, I think, one lap and then pulled into the pits with some kind of issue with his car. So yeah, Mercedes did bring their Spec 2. It was at Canada. Ferrari's Spec 2 was at Spain. I still don't get why they did that. Renault's was at France, am I right? Was it France?
Yeah.
Yeah, and was Honda's at France as well, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. And yeah, I think all the manufacturers, they'll bring their new power units at either Spa or Monza. I don't think they'll do it after that. But let's find a few more comments or questions. Twisted asks, nothing about the fallen giant called Williams. What steps do you think they need to do to be relatively competitive in the future? Well, first off, they need to get rid of Claire Williams, because she is the main reason why the team are in the position they are in. But I will say, Williams are starting to improve, but the caveat to that is, surely you couldn't get any worse than what they had been in testing and in the first race or two. So I'll be honest, I don't think Williams have a future. I think they'll be gone from Formula One in 3 years, 4 years time. Honestly, I think that. I think this team is heading for the same fate as the Jordan team. I think the only way that team continues from that base is if they get took over by another team. But I don't think Williams as a team, the Williams team, can go on, because I don't see how they're going to improve with how their finances are and how the team is run. And I don't see a future for them in the current modern Formula One. And they're going to go the same way as I said, Jordan, Lotus from the Colin Chapman era, Brabham. They're going to go the same way as those teams. Great teams when they were in their heyday, but they the times caught up with them. Pretty simple. Right. Let me find a couple more if I can. Eugene Kelly, Bottas to Haas. If he does get dropped from Mercedes, then I think yes, I think if Ocon does go to Mercedes, I think Bottas will go to Haas. I think he will, because I think Haas will want to get rid of Romain Grosjean, because even though Romain has improved his performances in the last couple of races, I think the last 2 years have proven that Romain is always going to be this way, which is inconsistent. So I think Haas will want to get rid of Romain Grosjean. And yeah, I think if Ocon replaces Bottas, that's where he will probably go. Right, let's find a couple more comments or questions in the chat, and then we'll come to the end here. Francisco, any prize for the Fantasy League winner, Chazza? Sadly, no, because basically I hadn't put really any planning into the Fantasy League side of things for the channel. But next year, I'm going to take it a lot more seriously in terms of, promoting it on the channel. I will, show it a few times and be a bit more interactive with it. Basically, what happened was at the start of the season, I set it up, I publicised it, and then because I was so busy with what I was doing with the videos, I forgot about it. So next year, I'm definitely going to, take it more seriously and promote it a lot more and get more members in the server for sure. Let's though find one final question from you guys. By the way, thank you guys for coming along. Has been great to talk to you guys as always for this long. And the final question, and I just missed it. Where did it go? It was about Renault. There you go. DDT TV 213. He asks, chances of Renault pulling out as a team only. Now, Renault, as I'm sure some of you guys will know, Renault have a history of pulling out Formula One a lot, whether they're an engine supplier or a team. In 1985, they pulled out. In 1997, they pulled out as an engine supplier. They pulled out as a team in 2011, and then came back, of course, in 2016. So I don't think it's an impossibility. I think if the project does fail, which it is looking like it is at the moment, if their project fails, then I think Renault will have no choice other to sell the team or, put a load more finances in it and try and build a new project. But if they don't build a new project after the failed one, then the only way I see for Renault is letting another, car company buy their team off them, because Renault have a history of leaving Formula One when they're not happy with how things are going or for financial reasons. And at the moment, things are not going their way. And if they continue like that, I think it's a real possibility. Hopefully it doesn't happen, because we want to see, the Renault F1 team in Formula One. But it absolutely can happen, given the history of Renault as a company in Formula One. Nib, do you think Renault, if things don't go to plan, do you think, say, by, 2022, 2023, do you think we could see Renault sell to another car company or leave the team leave the sport altogether?
Quite simply, yes. I think Cyril Beat, or Squirrel Irritable, as some people like to call us. Christian Horner mainly likes to call him. I love that. Love the banter between these two. It is hilarious. But I think that I think it's very possible. Squirrel has said that there was a lot of pressure going into the season to with the investment that they put in the team, paying Ricardo 50 million euro for the season. That's quite some investment. That they had to deliver, and they have not so far this season, and it doesn't look like it's going to improve, certainly at the moment. So yeah, obviously I don't think they're going to pull out for next season, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if things don't start to pick up and they don't start to move towards the front of the field in the next few years. I wouldn't be awfully surprised if Renault do leave the sport.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. And as Mr. Horner said, And looks as though Renault spent more money on Ricciardo's contract than actually developing the car, which is sad, of course, for Daniel Ricciardo. But, guys, that is it for the podcast today. Thank you guys for coming along. And, yeah, thank you guys for posting your comments and being a part of the stream as always. And I'll get to letting you guys know what is coming up on the channel next week in just a moment. Just want to say thanks to Nib for being on the podcast today. And yeah, Nib, thank you for being along, and we'll see you next week for sure.
Yep, you will indeed see me next week. But thanks for everyone in the chat for coming on. And of course, thanks for having me on the stream. And I hope you all have a very good week. And we'll see you later.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on, mate. And yeah, before I get into plugging the other things you can go and see to do with about me and the channel, I just want to let you guys know what is coming up next week on the channel. Now, on Monday, there will be a new, hopefully, if it does well in the in the first couple episodes or so. On Monday at 12 PM UK time will be a new series starting called Classic Incident Analysis, where basically, like we do on a Monday after a Grand Prix, we are going to be reviewing classic controversial incidents. And the first episode coming on Monday is Ayrton Senna versus Alain Prost. We're going to be looking at their famous flashpoints and analysing, from say today's perspective, how, they happened and who was at fault and stuff like that. So make sure to come along to that and give your thoughts as to, those battles back then between those two drivers and who was in the wrong in your opinion and who was, causing crashes and stuff like that. Let me know in that video, and make sure to turn up to that video if you want to hear my thoughts about that. But then on Wednesday at 12 PM UK time again will be part 2 to why Pierre Gasly should be dropped from Red Bull, where I will provide more examples of why Pierre Gasly does not deserve to be in that Red Bull car anymore and why he should be dropped. Then on Friday, next Friday at 12 PM UK time, will be a video about Valtteri Bottas and whether he does deserve to keep his seat at Mercedes for 2020. So make sure to come along to that Friday, 12 PM UK time. And then this time next week, next Saturday, 3 PM UK time, podcast will be live again. And that time, we are going to be previewing the rest of the season for the teams and drivers and give our, rest of season preview for, all the teams and the drivers. So make sure to come along to that 3 PM UK time live on the channel. But guys, thanks for coming along for this podcast today. Great to have you along as always. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new, because we do podcast episodes once a week. The bottom right of the screen, you can subscribe right there, or go to my homepage, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell. And also, don't forget to hit the like button as well for more content like this. And also, comment down below what you thought of this video and what did you think of what we had to say in this video. And for you, have the races so far in 2019 delivered? And what is your top 3 or top 5 races of the season so far? Let me know in the comment section down below. And also, don't forget to join the Discord server. Best place that is, that server, for notifications for my videos and streams. So make sure to join that. Link below in the description. And also, it is the hardcore ChazzaHDF1 community and is very active on a race weekend. And also, don't forget to check out the 2 mid-season review videos for the top teams and the midfield. The links to that are down below, so when this finishes in a moment, you can go and watch those if you have not seen them already. And also, follow me on Twitter at Chaz6110 and check out my website, ChazzaHD.com, for more content like this. But guys, until Monday for the classic incident analysis of Ayrton Senna versus Alain Prost, and until the next live stream, which is the podcast this time next week, it has been me, ChazzaHD. Goodbye.